Welcome back, Marvin and Laurie, still here with me. And now, are you overpaying for your vets or your pet's prescription? A cap on vets' prescription fees is being considered by the UK's competition body. This is due to concerns that pet owners are overpaying for treatments after thousands of pet owners said that they are struggling to pay their vet bills. Now, the watchdog had concerns that pet owners might not be getting basic information like price lists and were not informed of the cost of treatment before agreeing to them. So we'd love to hear from you on this. Have you been stung by a vet's bill? Or also, have you noticed the prices creeping up? Give us a call, 0207 862 2222, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. Now, Laurie, apparently you've owned 12 dogs.
No, I've never owned.
I was told that this morning. I was like,
no, I've never owned
dogs.
No, we have. My sister has a dog, and I have a dog that lives with my ex-husband, which is confusing, but that's the way it is at the moment. And I work with dogs. Obviously, I'm grooming dogs when I'm not here. So yeah, I do a lot of work.
But over the years, you have not owned 12 dogs.
I've not owned 12 dogs. No,
okay, cool.
But I did once have the most lovely Bichon, and Bichons have problems with their teeth. Mm-hmm. And you know, she had had a problem with her teeth. Went to the vet, and they said, "Oh, she needs 12 teeth out. That'll be £1,000." You know, and the thing is, by that time you're stood there and you can't say, well, I don't think my dog's worth £1,000. Can you? Don't want to be seen as a bad pet lover, do you? So they've got you over a barrel. There was nothing like, oh, this is how much it would cost, but you can go on this website and you can search for. You can't compare vets' prices, can you? And you get ambushed with them. So I'm absolutely with you with this idea that there should be a cap on prescription charge, but also there should be forced transparency on every website. They should have these are our fees for this, so you can compare before you walk in the door.
I am quite quietly delighted that this has made the headlines, only on the basis that I think a lot of people get dogs, or any animal for that matter. This is not just dogs, vet bills, this is any animal, not realising the financial implications. Now, Marvin, I know that you don't have any pets, but you do have children. The pester power, I'm sure, has started. Yeah. Is part of your reasoning behind not having it financial?
I think it's money and space and time. I think also, like, my children are lofty individuals and they have bright ideas, but when the level of care that's going to be required, it's my dog now, of course, basically. Yeah. But I think also just, trying to look after your children is hard enough. I think the financial implications of pets, if I got a bill for £1,000 out of the blue, especially now with everything else from the cost of living crisis, you start having to make really hard decisions. And I think dogs are amazing. I think specifically dogs are amazing. Cats don't care about humans enough and they walk off and do their own thing. But dogs, I feel like I could vibe. Yeah. Of course I want unconditional. I deserve it. I'm a great human being. But I think a dog would be amazing for my family. But I just think time, space and money really is a massive barrier to getting them.
Well, what we're talking about now is money and the price of vets' bills, particularly prescriptions. Let's now speak to Ben Simpson-Vernon now. You're going to help us get the price of these bills down as much as you can. What do you make of plans for a cap on prescriptions? As a vet yourself, is this a problem?
I think prescriptions are one of those fees that are quite easy to directly compare between practices, and they do vary quite a lot. So I guess it would be an example of a fee that could be capped and made standardised. But at the end of the day, the cost of the prescription that the practice charges will go into the overall running costs of running the practice, which are really high. And if they're forced to reduce the cost of prescription fees, then other fees will have to go up. So I think the overall cost of care wouldn't necessarily decrease as a result of that.
OK, stay with us. We've got callers coming in already and we want to get as many of your questions answered as possible. So let's go straight there. Charlotte from Staffordshire, do you have a question or a comment on this?
I just have a comment, really. Basically, I've got 4 animals and the prices have just gone up so much. 5 years ago, it was £250 for a dental. I was quoted £1,000 the other day. And it just seems to be, my cats are 16, 13 and 10. Things change in 16 years. You don't necessarily expect prices to go up that much. I save and I love my vets, but it's just madness. And I do worry about welfare of animals if people just simply can't pay the bills. What do they do?
Absolutely. But you've picked up on another point here that Laurie brought up earlier, and I actually want to ask you, Ben, if you're stood there in front of a vet and they're saying it's going to be £1,000 to have their teeth cleaned and descaled, which is just extraordinary, what can you say? Can you haggle? Can you go? Is there a comparethevets.com? I mean, what can you do?
No, you can't haggle, but I guess, I mean, talking specifically about dentals, they are procedures that can take an awful lot of time. And obviously the time depends on how many teeth there are to extract, if any. We may do a dental that has one extraction, there may be 15, 20 extractions even, which obviously takes a considerably longer period of time. And over time, I think dentistry is one of those areas where the standard of care that the average practice is offering has increased a lot. Most practices will now have dental x-ray as standard, which is important to have when we're extracting teeth. But that equipment costs thousands of pounds, has to be maintained and serviced, and so that cost has to be passed on. But in some instances with dentals, it may be that a gold standard would be to perform a pre-anesthetic blood test. But I may say if the owner is concerned about cost, then that may be optional for a pet that it seems to be otherwise healthy. But if we have a 15-year-old very elderly cat that needs a dental, then that blood test is more important. So there are ways where we can adjust the fees, but yeah, it's not a case of haggling really.
Can I not introduce one other thing, which is that what's happened certainly post-pandemic, I read anyways, that many vet practices have been taken over and are now part of big groups.
Yes.
So although we're talking about, the money goes back into, but no, the money goes in profit for the big groups who own the dentist. So that's one of the reasons why the costs have gone up, surely.
Is that a fair comment, Ben?
Well, I think that's one of the things that the CMA investigation is looking into. What are the profits made by these corporations, and are they excessive? And so I think most vets and veterinary organisations welcome this investigation to ensure I want to know that I'm not overcharging my clients, and obviously people want to know then are not being overcharged. But I think fundamentally the overall cost of care has been increasing massively, not just because of the standard of care increasing and us needing more equipment, but all overheads of the business have increased. Supply problems with medications mean that a lot of medication prices have increased, and the cost of staffing vet practices as well. One good aspect of the profession becoming more corporate is that staff are being paid fairer wages. And in the past, veterinary nurses would have been being paid minimum wage for a job which is highly qualified. But now these corporations are introducing more reasonable salaries, still much lower than our human sort of counterparts in medicine, but a fairer wage. And that is partly because of a huge loss of staffing from the veterinary industry. Most practices struggle to recruit, and so they're having to put up costs, put up salaries, or relying on locums to staff the practice.
So it's
that will increase
general struggles of business as well. Charlotte, thank you for your call. Emma from Berkshire, what's your comment about vet bills? Have you faced a big one?
So yeah, we did. Quite recently, we had a dog that suffered from IVDD. We went to our regular doctors, who sent us to specialist vets. And
what is that, Emma?
IVDD is basically to do with its spine, and she couldn't walk. She lost the use of her back legs. Okay. And basically £8,000 later, but we didn't know at the time that our insurance company was going to cover it. We had to wait 8 long weeks for that, so it's quite a traumatic wait.
Wow. Ben, do you find a lot of owners coming in really struggling to pay these kinds of bills?
Yeah, of course. And that sort of situation, if an animal comes in and is paralysed by a slip disc, and then there are other instances where there are options and we can say, we can try this medication, see you back in a few days. But in that kind of instance, I assume the caller's dog will have needed to have spinal surgery and probably at a specialist practice, and that costs a lot of money. But of course that is not an option for a lot of pet owners, particularly if they don't have a good insurance. And so there are sad instances where if a pet is suffering and we can't treat them, then we do end up putting to sleep some of these animals, and that's heartbreaking for everyone involved. But I guess the key message would be, particularly if you have an at-risk breed for those kind of problems, like a French Bulldog or a sausage dog, a Dachshund, then get good insurance, prepare for the worst case scenarios, I would say.
Oh, that's absolutely heartbreaking. Emma, please tell me your insurance paid out on that.
We found out 8 weeks later that actually, thank goodness it did, but it was very stressful because the specialist vet actually wanted the money kind of like there and then, straight after, like within a week.
Oh, Emma, that's so scary, but thankfully it came to a good end. And you hear horror stories about insurance companies not paying
okay?
Is the dog okay?
Definitely.
That's great.
Yeah, Agnes is absolutely fine. She's got a little limp, but she's doing so well. Thank you so much.
Great, we're delighted to hear it, Emma. Charlotte from County Durham, what's your vet bill story?
Well, yesterday I took my dog to the vets because he had a cut on one of his paw pads, and at first when I noticed it I didn't think it was serious enough to warrant a trip to the vets, but I monitored it and then it wasn't healing, so I decided to take him in, and the vet told me that he would need stitches in it and that had to be done under general anaesthetic, and I was charged £778 for that, which I was really gobsmacked by because it's more than double what I had thought it would be.
It's a really common thing as well. Okay, Ben, how do we get these bills down? When we go and we get told by the vets, there's whatever it is you need done, it's going to be this price. How should people respond? What can people do to try and get those prices down?
I think ask are there other options? And in some instances there aren't. But in cases like that, for example, if there's a wound, yes, ideally the wound would be stitched depending on how big and deep it is, where it is. But it may be an option to place a bandage. It may be a case to an option to leave it to heal. I mean, in terms of pets with long-term chronic health problems that are on ongoing medication, it can be an option to get a written prescription and purchase medication from an online pharmacy. That wouldn't have helped in that instance. I wouldn't think to keep that bill down, but for ongoing health problems that can help. And I think just having good insurance is a must if you own a pet nowadays, with vet fees being what they are. And just check the small print of the insurance. Some insurance won't cover dental procedures, for example. So check those sorts of details.
What if you're on benefits? Is there any opportunities to get a bit of help if you're on benefits?
There can be. So a lot of charities are sort of inundated at the moment with a cost of living crisis and struggling with their workloads, struggling with staffing. But there are clinics like the PDSA that can provide support and treatment for people who qualify or on benefits, and other charities depending on where you live. So there is help for those who are really struggling.
Charlotte, thank you very much for your call. Diane from Northumberland, what's your story about vet bills?
Oh, hi. I took my cat to the vet because she was limping. And they x-rayed her and knocked her out, x-rayed her. And then at the end, after they'd done all that, they checked her paw, and she had a pine needle in between her toes, which would have needed taken out and antibiotics. So the bill was actually £384.
Well, that's, my personal opinion, outrageous. You had to pay that. But shouldn't that be on the vet? If the vet failed to check the very basics at the beginning, Ben, is that cost not on them?
I think it really depends on the situation. And I mean, in that instance, we're all human, we make mistakes. And particularly if you've got a cat that is quite difficult to examine, we may not be able to, in a conscious cat, examine closely between their toes. I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't there in this situation. I don't know how easy to handle this cat is. But yeah, obviously mistakes happen. I would say, if you have a genuine concern, speak to your practice, ask to speak to management, and practices have means of responding to these complaints, and just have a chat to them.
Diane, I'm gutted for you, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. Wendy from Lancashire, what's your vet bill story?
Hi, I've got an elderly dog. He's 13 and a half. I've been with my local vets for 24 years with a previous dog as well. Quite healthy dogs, but what I'm finding certainly is quite shocking is some of these bills. Now he's older, I'm going more often, of course. And then to find out that some of the little local friendly run family vets that have been here a long time are getting swallowed up by these American companies.
Oh,
getting
Wendy,
much more less personalised.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to wrap this up. I wanted to go for ages and ages and I've run out of time. Thank you very much for your call. Huge thank you to Ben as well. Now, before we go, I just wanted to tell you about Monday's show. Make sure you tune in to find out how to book a cheap holiday. We're going to be joined by travel expert Simon Calder, who will have the top tips for booking a bargain, whether you're thinking of going on holiday abroad or here in the UK.